So good, we have the recording started. And welcome to another SUP Workshop. Purpose of those sessions is to give you guys tangible ideas, best practices, and strategies and tactics on how to improve your startup journey. As always, it's 45 minutes plus 15 minutes Q&A. And keep your mics on mute and webcam turned on because it's way more fun for everyone that way. And we'll upload the recordings as always to startuppeople.com afterwards. And yes, also before we click the Q&A afterwards, or before we get that started, I'll pull a short poll/survey just to get your anonymous opinion on the session. So make sure that we're doing the right things. And also, we usually do Zoom for those things, but now we're trying Google Meet. So have patience if there's some technical issues or something like that. But it should work fine. Yes, so it's my pleasure to welcome today's expert, Erik from Zupyak, a marketing expert and startup operator, now running Zupyak. And it's a company that I've been personally following since the tech site days, actually. And know Magnus and the guys a lot, behind it a lot. And yeah, been following this journey with both curiosity and interest. So, and Erik has been kind enough to put his thoughts and best practices together for us today. So hoping for a very valuable session. And I'm gonna turn over the mic to you, Erik. Thanks for joining in.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to see everyone. So my name is Erik. I'm one of the co-founders of Zupyak. The background behind Zupyak is so Sebastian knows Magnus Bergman, who's our largest angel investor, and from the beginning, Zupyak was called Tech Site, so it was kind of a blogging platform, like a B2B medium, and it was launched in 2017 by my co-founder, almost like as a test around user-generated content. But the platform just kept growing, and it sort of went growth took off. Every year he was growing, 80,000, 150,000. When I joined, we had 250,000 users, and basically we saw that these users were mainly small businesses and startups, creating and publishing content around lots of different topics, but it was company content marketing. It wasn't personal blogs. But what we also saw was that the content that they were creating was average at best. So a lot of these companies don't have the knowledge or the skills to create content, moreover optimized content that will actually perform well in search engines. So quite timely when we were looking at this, about this time last year, as you may know, ChatGPT came and generative AI became sort of, it became apparent that AI and large language model technology had sort of taken a huge leap. So we saw that we can leverage this technology to help these users create even better content. And in March, we launched our first AI-enabled tools. So I won't go too much into Zupyak and the platform. I'll just show you some, basically describe what we are. But I will moreover show you our tools as a way of describing how we can use this technology in practice. So it's not a sales call or about selling you our tools, but it's more about showing you what you can do, and also more importantly, overall talk about where's the AI content landscape heading. Will AI content get penalized by Google, as you said, Resart, or what's going on? So about myself, so I've been in the startup scene for quite a few years. I was previously the CMO and CPO of a company called Lendify. So we created the peer-to-peer lending category in Sweden. And my job there was basically to get the most amount of customers at the lowest possible cost. So I've spent millions of VC money trying to get customers while realizing that it wouldn't work. We did a sort of marketing pivot towards content, PR, and organic growth. So my claim to fame in this space is that we ranked #1 for the most difficult keyword in Sweden, and 1 click cost SEK. So we actually saved quite a bit of money just by leveraging content. And it also made me realize that most companies, because we were ahead of the banks and stuff who have hundreds of people working with this, so just realized that content is quite upgraded. And the landscape today, I mean, marketing is harder than ever. There are way too many channels. Paid marketing costs are increasing. So Facebook, example, is up 89% between 21 and 22. So 89%. That's inflation on steroids gone bad. So you have a tough job as a marketeer, especially if you are a startup or a small business, because most of the time you don't have the budget to have a proper agency. You might work with freelancers, but that's difficult. It takes a lot of time. So our thesis is that Gen AI will fix most of this, if not all of these problems, because for startups and small businesses, this is actually a silver bullet that can sort of fix all the issues that have been there before around how to create campaigns, how to create content, but also like how to set up your strategy, what channels to choose. So we're quite convinced that finally, we can even out the playing field between startups and bigger companies who have loads of budget and stuff. So Zupyak, as I mentioned, today we're 420,000 users on the platform, and the growth of our platform is actually driven by the users themselves because they publish over 50,000 articles each month. And we have around 150,000 visitors each month reading and creating content. And our Gen AI tools were released in March. So why people like them is that they're quite simple to use and they actually work. So we have a few case studies now. Alwi is one of them. So they're a fintech app. They grew traffic by 50% in 3 months. We can look at their blog later just as an example of how you can do it, because I think they've done it fairly well. So Gen AI, progress-wise, I mean, this graph stops at 2021, but I think even after 2021, it's been probably even more exponential. And the size of the models is not the only determinant of how good large language models is, but you can see that we are very early because this evolution is happening at sort of an exponential pace. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, OpenAI announced their multimodal model, meaning that you can now talk to, you can talk and you can also input images, it can generate audio. So we're moving beyond just text to other media, meaning that these models are now multimodal. And I think that it's hard even for me, who's sort of in this space, to even keep up. So I think it's not about the technology anymore. It's about the use cases. So even probably for your own startups, you're probably thinking about this. If you're not, you should maybe start doing that. But I think most startups are probably thinking about like, how does AI and Gen AI play into our business model, into everything else. But for marketing and sales, it's actually one of the most apparent use cases for large language models. So there are 2 cases for AI that have been working improved. That's content generation that we're talking about today. And the other is coding. So a sort of co-pilot for coding is actually happening right now, and it's working. So it makes developers more efficient. For content generation, it's here to stay for sure. AI. So 90% of all content on the internet will be AI generated by 2026, and that's not far away. It's 3 years. So if you're not doing this, your competitors most likely are. And of course, there will be a shift in the job market. I think that number of 56% will lose their jobs might be true. I think probably some content creators need to rethink their niche. But overall, I think this is causing a lot of disruption that is happening very quickly. And I think that the big divide will be marketers who actively learn and leverage AI and marketers who don't. So AI is probably part of the products we're using today. But there's a difference, I think, between staying up to date and actually using the technology, playing around with it, and just using the tools out of the box. So the big question is, generative AI has obviously changed a lot of the interface around search, or might, because if you've been using ChatGPT, you can imagine that the sort of chat experience, it's a much better one than just Googling. So if you want to get information quickly, you can just ask and it will give you the answer. I think what we saw with ChatGPT is sort of an early hint of what will happen. It's for sure not the final destination for like what the search experience will look like. So let's try and sort of unpack this a little bit and start with how it looks today. So in my example, you just Googled best type of shoes for a middle-aged man. Then I get some random shoes by Google Shopping, some article about some shoes every guy needs, and then some related questions which indicate that I am middle-aged, meaning I'm older. So I'm 38. I don't think I'm that old, but obviously Google thinks I am. So results are semi-relevant, maybe not super relevant. But if you look at what Google have shown now in their preview, they have something called Labs, which is basically looking into the future of Google search. It looks like this. So if you ask about a plant for a dark room, you get actually very relevant results that are very specific to your query. And what happens here around the content is that the best content for each search query gets aggregated. And more importantly, you get much more relevant results thanks to Gen AI. And you can also ask more questions and drill down into the query you have. So what will happen is actually search will become much more relevant and a better experience overall. So the other thing into this is this myth about AI content being penalized and so on. Google went out in February and basically stated publicly that they don't care how content is created. So they don't really care if you use AI to create your content. It's the same rules apply, meaning that content quality will be sort of the number one factor. So why would they go out publicly with that? Well, one thing is there is no way anymore of determining what content has been created through generative AI and what content has been created by a human. So we've run a lot of testing on this and so on. And if you try a human written article, you almost have the same probability of it, the AI content detectors thinking that it's AI written as when you are using AI content. And that's because the LLMs have become so good at creating this content that it's basically impossible. And the risk of false positives, meaning that they flag sort of human written content as AI content, is way too high, meaning that Google has said, we don't really care because the cat's out of the bag. We can't really assess if it's AI generated or not, meaning that this is the new normal. 90% was the figure in 3 years. So if 90% of all content is AI generated, for sure, Google would have a hard time only looking at the 10% that isn't. So basically, the key takeaway is here to stay. So it's better to get on the bandwagon than sort of staying on the side. So the hypothesis here is that SEO, like the new SEO game, will be about maximizing your chance of being aggregated by the AI. And if you're not aggregated in sort of the top results, you won't really see growth. So if you have a lot of content ranking number 5, number 6, that organic traffic may die when they do this switch. It's not known when they will do the switch, because the key problem for Google in this image, so something is missing from this image, which might be quite apparent, but there are no ads. So ads is 80% of Google revenue. So they haven't yet figured out how to integrate the ads. I think they might do it quite quickly. I mean, it's, just add a box below this featured content or something, but still they haven't. That's the one nut left to crack for Google. And it's a tough one, because if you have 80% of your revenue coming from one revenue source tied to this experience, you don't want to sort of just place a bet that 80% of this revenue will stay. They're also a public company. So when they did a demo back in January and the demo failed, I think the stock fell 8%, which was like a couple of $1 billion. So they have a lot at stake, meaning that it will take some time. But I think probably in the next 6, 12, 18 months, this is going to happen. Because if they don't, I know quite a few people who use Bing and the Bing app for search. It works quite well. So what will happen instead? People just move over to Bing. But let's see. It's an interesting thing anyway, I think. But the key takeaway is that your content needs to be optimized, and not being optimized will both be a risk if you're dependent on organic traffic today, but it's also an opportunity, especially for small startups who can move quickly. So let's dig into sort of how you can do this. There are 4 sort of elements to organic growth that we usually talk about. So first you have the sort of SEO based, which is all about how fast is your website. Is your website readable by Google? Some cases you might need like an SEO agency or something to actually do this assessment. But there are also free tools that I will link to them in the presentation that you can try to sort of see like how bad is it for us, or are we actually even optimized at the moment. And then you have external signals, which I'm not going to talk about too much today, but it's actually one factor that is more and more important. So that's all about everyone beside you who sort of mention you and link to your website, and maybe magazines and stuff that mention your name, so PR, and it's becoming an even more important signal. And we saw this with Lendify when we were doing a lot of work on SEO. That every time we got PR, which we were pretty good at it, we got some major like Dagens Industri and some of the bigger ones. Every time we got PR, our rankings jumped, like from, I think we went from like page 4 to page 1 with one article for certain keywords. So it is a more and more important signal. So if you're not thinking about PR as a channel, it's super cheap and actually quite cost-effective way to both potentially get customers if it's in the right sort of niche, and also of course build your external presence. Because if you are sort of up against incumbents or bigger companies, they usually have lots and lots of mentions, which is something you don't have. So you may be quicker to adapt to trends or what people are searching for, but if you haven't been in the game that long, and if you're a startup, that's usually your biggest problem. Now the good thing about AI content is this sort of changes the playing field a bit and gives an unfair advantage to startups and other companies who utilize this strategy. So I'm going to show you how.
Can I just ask a question regarding the PR perspective? That's really interesting to hear that you can like trigger and improve your ranking because of that. Is
Yeah.
there some specific, what is the simple way to know which journalistic channels you should focus on in order to actually get that push? Because I'm assuming Google ranks them as well, in order to know like if your mentions gets better ranking or not.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a thing called topical authority, and that's how Google assesses. Like they position companies or organizations in different topics and niches and verticals. So if you are in the you're in the startup space with SUP 46, if you get a mention in Break It, who are most likely associated with like the startup niche, it's probably a lot more worth for you than getting a mention in gardening magazine, which is not relevant at all. So Google is actually quite good at sort of categorizing websites and magazines and news outlets. So think about it like, where is your audience? Like if your audience is people, they most likely read Break It, and that's a good fit. So that's a way of thinking about it. Make sense? So on the keyword strategy, it's something a bit underrated that most companies overlook, but search is and still will be in the future based on keywords, meaning yet you have to understand what your customers and potential customers are searching for and optimize for those keywords. So that's a common mistake that most companies do. They just create content without thinking about the keywords. So there is something called long tail, there's something called short tail. Long tail is the keywords with high competition and a lot of volume, but low competition keywords are called the other way around. So short tail is the high competition, high volume keywords. Long tail is the low competition, low volume keywords. And long tail is basically like throwing spaghetti at a wall. So there's a lot of searches here, but some of them might actually be super relevant for your niche or for your industry, and they might be very high intent in terms of like a customer would be really close to actually a purchase when they Google this. But it used to be more work to do content for long tail, but AI content has changed all of that. So it's actually one of the most successful tactics we see our customers using. And our tool is actually quite good at that, capturing the long tail of searches, because short tail is tough. So if you're a startup, this is about grinding and investing into, like, borrow money at Lendify. As I mentioned, it's the most competitive keyword in Sweden. It took us 1 year and a lot of investment. Actually, we spent lots of resources on it, and then it paid off. But it's a lot of hard work. Long tail is also good if you're not like, you think this might work, but it's not your number one priority. Spend a couple of hours or even an hour a week, and you can get results from long tail because there are not so many people competing for these keywords. And the key thing around long tail is just going beyond the obvious. As you see this is our keyword tool. So marketing agency, as an example, you see a lot of red there. These are very competitive keywords, but if you think like just one level below, what are these people actually searching for? If you're looking for a marketing agency, well, you want to find customers for your business. So just going one level like beyond the obvious will make a lot of difference. And then the number one thing around SEO basics is just positioning, and this is something a lot of companies miss. We usually talk about 3 elements. It's like, how do you want to position yourself, what customers actually want, and what they Google. And most startups and even mature companies, they think mostly about how they want to position themselves. So it's kind of like an inside out thing where they think, well, we are this thing. But the thing with describing yourself that way is like no customer potentially understands that. So the key thing is thinking in the shoes of your customers, like who are they and who are your buyers. If you're a SaaS company, for example, you might have a typical buyer. It may not be the exactly same thing as sort of the company. So if you start with thinking about your customers and what they're searching for, that's actually a good start. And then it's about the sort of basics. What do you offer for who? And the people searching for your product, what is the job that they want solved? What's the problem that they're facing, and how are you unique? So this article was from 2015, and by that stage we had shorter attention span than a goldfish. I don't think it's going in the right direction for this. So we might, I don't know, have half of the attention span than a goldfish now. So you need to quickly just show the value you provide. I took SUP 46 as an example, and it's not that you're bad in any way, but just as an example of a meta description, which is the thing that if I Google SUP 46, this is what is shown in the search results. So it's kind of like a free advertisement and free advertising space that a lot of companies miss. But if you apply this sort of thinking, what do you offer for who? I think it's actually quite clear with SUP 46. I mean, membership-based community, founders, operators. What do you get? Well, you get access to networking and resources. And then it's a bit too long. So the aim of so there's a cliffhanger in there. Normally you want to shorten that thing so it's actually all the text is visible. But overall, I think it's pretty good because you can actually see like what's the value I can get from SUP 46. One thing I maybe would add is keywords. So having
would that
keywords
fit in there as well?
Yeah, I mean it comes down to positioning. So I think it's a bit more tricky for you because it's not like you have a category of platforms that you are a X. It might be community is quite broad. Membership-based community is also quite broad. It could be a number of things. So if you are in an existing category, like Zupyak, we have AI writer as our main category because it has, I think, a couple of like 40,000 searches or something monthly. So we try to optimize for AI writer, but in your instance, it might be difficult to find a home in a category. But then you think about other keywords that could be relevant, because if you have the keywords in there, you could probably attract some traffic based on that keyword. Yeah. So then to the actual how do you do it? So keyword strategy, we usually talk about 3 steps. So you can do this depending on your level of ambition. I mean, this can be done in a couple of hours, and you can spend months on this. And I think you don't need to follow this very structured process. I think if you're not doing anything, just start by looking at like what are some of your keywords and find maybe just top 10. And just start writing some content for those keywords. But overall, we like to see like clusters or themes. So you can have a couple of themes that you're thinking about, and then in those clusters you have the actual keywords. So just to show you sort of how this works. So this is our platform, and we have 4 different tools. So one of them is the keyword recommender, where you can just look up keywords and get ideas. So it's also based on market and language. Certain markets are easier. So US and English, obviously a huge market and lots of searches. Sweden, we have, I think, 32 markets in the dropdown and 32 languages. But Sweden works as well. There are fewer searches if you compare it to US in English, but for Swedish it's actually quite easy to find like long tail keywords, because there are also few searches that sometimes it's not very competitive. So let's just look at, I think you mentioned options programs, Sebastian, as like one theme maybe that's SUP 46 could talk about. And then you get the difficulty and the competition. So you can see actually for this keyword, it's not very competitive at all. And these are long tail keywords. So about 140 searches a month, that's the denominator, with quite low difficulty, meaning that if you created content for this for these topics, you actually have a pretty high likelihood of ranking for some of these. You can also use our AI feature to propose sort of topics related to options program to get some inspiration of like what are the adjacent
How
things.
does that work? What does the AI do to think of this?
So it basically looks at the adjacent topics. So for this, like what are the terms for an options program for employees, what are options programs, and then the keywords here are usually, sometimes they're a bit generic. So this might not be a search for your specific thing. It might be, so this is more used as sort of inspiration for topics that are close to your topic, if that makes sense. So if we try just US and see the difference, we can maybe think about startup fundraising, the thing. So you can see that this is super competitive, and although there are lots and lots of searches for this.
Is that monthly searches or
monthly.
like what's the monthly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Monthly searches. So, but if we do go with maybe startup fundraising, even though it was a difficult word, we can try it. So what we then do, we can go to the topic generated to get ideas of what to write about, or we can use the sort of AI writer products, which takes you step by step to creating an article, which is actually SEO optimized. We have a few different content types. The most common one is blog post. So you could put this on your blog if you have one.
But what's the difference between a blog post and an article?
Good question. Users like to press different buttons. So no, it's actually sort of the same thing. But some people prefer to call it article, but most of our content goes on blogs. So I would say it's 95% of the content that is generated go on blogs. So, but it's actually almost the same thing as an article. So then you just enter the topic you want to write about. And then this is something that we introduced actually yesterday. You can add extra sort of input to the AI to give additional instructions. And it could be anything from like, I want to drive sales with this article, or I want to mention my brand several times. So we can talk about SUP 46. So just say, mention the author who help startups with fundraising. And it will hopefully do that. You can't really trust it sometimes because it just does something else, but most of the time it works. And then we can choose the tonality. So maybe let's go with a neutral tonality. And you are a startup founder. That's the audience of our article. And then we get some suggestions for topics to write about. Do's and don'ts for startup fundraising, comprehensive guide, sounds good. We can also use our own topic, like if we have an idea, but this is a way where if you have a keyword you want to use, you can just go the full process.
Yeah, all of those looks really good. actually as
Yeah.
topics.
And then in the next steps, we actually propose additional keywords you can use. And this works most of the time. You can go also back and forth to find different sort of keywords, but it's a way for, normally you would have to do a lot of research to find these keywords, but we propose them for you. So you can try, some of them will have volume, some of them won't. It's something we're working on to improve sort of the relevance of the suggested keywords. Most of the time it works. So especially now, since I'm doing a demo, it doesn't work. So that's usually what happens. But let's see if yeah, this is better. So now we're getting a lot of keywords here that are relevant, but we haven't actually looked at them before. So it's a good way of just automatically getting more keywords into your article that are relevant, because all of them are relevant actually for the topic.
I'm very surprised just looking at the results. When I also noticed that when you did the US English search, like crowdfunding is a huge volume driver.
Yeah.
Like, but it's not super common that people talk about it.
No.
But apparently people like to search for it.
Yeah, that's that's an interesting observation.
Yeah.
I agree. I think it's not very talked about. And then you just press generate the article. And this used to take about a minute, I think 4 or 5 months ago. And then it became sort of an awkward moment when I was doing demos. Now it takes about 10 to 15 seconds is the average, because we switched infrastructure provider. So we're now using Azure as sort of the infra provider for the LLMs. So then you get the article. It's usually, you can see the character count at the bottom. This is 6,000 characters. And now sometimes you get a bit of formatting errors here. We've tried to control this. It's difficult because you get quite a high variance in the output. But the content should be good either way. So you can just format it however.
It's just a formatting question, not the content.
No, exactly. So the content is usually good. And then we have another cool feature, which is also very useful if you have existing content. But now we can try this with this article. So this is called the content and SEO score. So we basically take your content and benchmark it towards the top ranking content on Google. So remember I talked about the importance of optimization will be more important. So we believe that this feature will be even more relevant once Google switches over to the LLMs and the sort of LLM way of searching. So basically we do a Google, or the robot does a Google search and looks at the top 10 results, and then sort of decomposes those articles to look at how long are they, how are they structured in terms of paragraphs and headings, and then gives you a score of 0 to 100. Because usually,
which top ranking, like within my vertical or industry or generally?
For this topic. So the main keyword in our article was startup fundraising. So it's going to take this topic and then just do the same search for startup fundraising and that topic to see sort of what the results look like. And in the
sorry, can I just jump in with a question before we look at the results? Like, I can't see anything regarding one thing that I've seen been very popular for SEO articles and blog posts is like an author card that has, for some reason, a like ranking trigger to it. It brings, from indexing or search engine point of view, a little bit of credibility and thought leadership, especially if it's someone who's known. Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, it's very important. So it's actually the sender of the article, and it relates to what we talked about earlier, which is topical authority. So if you get an expert to write an article, or if you like ghostwrite an article with a famous person, that's a good thing. So you always want to try and have an author behind your article. So if you would publish this to our own community, which you can do, we sort of, one of the first things you would do is just create your profile with your name and your logo and a short bio. So it's an important factor because it sort of establishes that you are a good person to talk about this topic. So if you have a blog, just make sure that you have this bio thing. So that's a good spot there.
Nice. We have a couple of more minutes before we need to jump into Q&A.
Yeah. So that was basically it for the sort of demo part. So I'll jump back into the presentation. So the process: just find your top 10 keywords. You can save them in a content library or wherever. And then I showed you the AI writer. And then in terms of results, we see more and more companies using AI to sort of really accelerate content creation, and you can get really tangible results. Lendify was obviously the case I was working on. We reached the number one position for our top keyword, but for AI, it's actually long tail. It's a very good use case. So creating lots of content for different long tail keywords. Flowrite is a good example. So they went from 0 to 500,000 visitors in 1.5 years, and 98% of their traffic is coming through their blog. So I think it's one of the more extreme examples. We do have some more local examples. I think Arc Capital, who do sort of venture lending, did something similar on like a VC database that they created through AI. And we see a lot of our customers also doing this. So you can base it on a theme or a topic, but it's a very efficient way of creating content. And if you're not doing anything, check your website with the Google PageSpeed tool. It's a good start. Find some keywords, set up a blog, create a few articles per week, even like every other day if you have the time, and then hopefully see traffic grow. So it doesn't require a lot of investment, and I think there are many reasons, actually not very many reasons not to do it, because it's very time efficient and the ROI is quite high. So the key takeaways: test and learn from new tools. You can try our tool or other tools. We have a voucher code called Friends30, which gives you 30 days for free. An hour a month is better than nothing, and it's easier than ever. I read a lot of newsletters around AI, so Superhuman is my favorite one. We actually advertise a lot with them as well. So it's like a 3-minute read every morning on AI, and it sort of keeps you a bit more up to date. Yeah, that's it.
That's awesome. Thanks, Erik. I find it really helpful. I'm gonna trigger the survey. Hopefully that works. So just make sure you fill that in. It's anonymous, and it's just a good way for us to know if you find it helpful or not. I certainly did. Let's jump into the Q&A session while you respond. Anyone want to jump in with the first question? Recite?
Yes, I have one. So we at PageSpeed have over, let's say, 5,000 products. And creating the, let's say, the descriptions one by one is going to take maybe months.
Yeah.
And do you guys have any API, or is there any way to somehow, let's say, automate the entire process instead of going product by product? Because let's say we have Steam, so basically the Steam gift card, but that product is available, let's say, in the US, in Canada, UK, and all around the world. So we have like different kind of pages for each country.
So we don't offer an API. We do have, we are launching a feature where you can just import any type of content through the URL. But I think there are tools out there where you can actually plug in through an API. It would probably require some dev time on your end. that's not our sort of primary use case, but I think it is a good use case for AI content if you have like lots of different markets, if you have lots of different topics to write about. So I think you should definitely do it. And I mentioned Arc Capital. I think they did something similar, sort of semi-built in-house. So this VC database of, I think they have a couple of hundred or thousand VCs, which they created up using some AI tools. So I think there are probably tools out there to help you. I don't think we're the right one, but it's a good use case.
Thank you.
Good. Olivia, what's your question? Thanks for raising your hand. Very formal of you. I don't know if you have your mic turned on. Give it another try.
Or just write in the chat. That works.
Yeah. Good thinking. You can just write it. While, yeah, go for it.
Article,
Do you see?
yeah.
Let me just repeat the question. And Olivia, correct me if I misunderstood. Is there any difference in the length of article? Is there like a way to optimize like what's good, what's bad?
Yeah, exactly. So that's why the score is good, because it tells you the average length on your topic, because it varies a lot between searches. So it's a common misconception that all articles should be 1,500 words, because that's not simply true. If you're Googling something simple, you might just want a few hundred words. So that's why the scoring tool is useful, because it will actually look at your topic and say like, what kind of content does Google like, and how long is it usually? So it is for sure a factor you need to think about.
Another question while, so Olivia runs a very, her business is connected to high credibility. And automated content is not necessarily like always connected to high credibility or quality. It could also many times just be the opposite, like quantity. Like, is there any things in the playbook that you have seen that sort of keeps a good balance between like, okay, this is serious credibility with serious content with high credibility, but still scalable in a way? Just want to hear your thoughts on that.
So I think if you're working in one of those industries, you might need to put an extra human touch and also fact check. We have in the roadmap to do like automatically show you what sources or the content is derived from, because you can actually do that. We haven't done it yet, but one example would be, I mentioned Alwi as one of our sort of customers we usually talk about. They have personal finance content, so it's obviously they need to fact check a few things to make sure that it's accurate. But all of this content was created using our tool. So what they do is basically they can get probably 90-ish% of the bulk of the content from our tool, but then they put those extra 10% in just fact checking and reviewing. But if you compare it to writing the article from scratch, they're obviously saving tons of time. So and they also owe optimization, of course, that also saves a lot of time and money otherwise spent on agencies probably. So I would say if you're in one of those industries, it's I would say it's equally useful, but requires a bit more human touch.
What about other channels that are not as copy heavy? Like, I'm gonna keep sending questions. Like, feel free if anyone else have any questions in between. But when it's not necessarily blog or article, like, does your tool provide any help for Instagram or like any other channels? And because sometimes the language is different, it's more formal, it's less formal, and more hashtags maybe. Like, what's your general best practices there?
So our long-term goal is to really replace everything that an agency does for a small business or a startup. So we are moving into other channels. We are doing them one by one though, because we think that we could just launch a few of these, but they will be like okay, they won't be great. So we rather just build out use case by use case. And that's why we started with search, because search is also, it's usually one of the more trickier ones, even though we see that Instagram content and all of that is also a bit of a pain for startups. It's also quite closely tied to images. So images obviously is on the rise as well. You have DALL-E 3 came out from OpenAI, but Midjourney is still the best one. So we're kind of waiting for the Midjourney API, which is rumored to come. And once we get that, we will have images, which is sort of the link. But I think the sort of usefulness of this technology is, images and social posts for sure. It's just a different sort of angle to the thing rather than blog and long form content. But the interesting thing about that is, I guess it's more, you can get more data from the actual text and the image to see how it performs. So there's a lot more to be done in terms of like optimizing through the AI for the best result, because organic, it usually takes a lot of time to see if the content actually performs. Sometimes it can be quick, it can go in a day, but it's harder to measure, I would say, than something else.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see when the APIs gets shared, especially Midjourney API. Edis, you have you're running a cybersecurity company, and you have you have fantastic access to media channels thanks to your partner. Like, do you have any questions in terms of like is there a world where you could like maybe combine those things? Like, Edis, I'm giving you the mic for a second.
Yeah, hello guys, and thank you, Erik, for the presentation. Really appreciating that, of course. I had actually a question prepared. I didn't want to interrupt you. And I'm really happy, and I have luck, of course, with the colleague I have, the shareholder that owns a media company. But I don't understand marketing so much, but I'm more about, my vision is to brand the company. We was talking about it in the beginning, branding the name, and the content, of course, is important, that maybe brands the name. But when you're a startup and we are worldwide, you can say, but I want to focus on the Sweden market because I live here right now. So we want to settle a Swedish company. But what is the most important step when you want to build the trust? Because this is my area of business. It's important when you take over someone's security.
Yeah, so I would say that establishing yourself as sort of a trusted source is a very efficient way of building trust. So PR, I think, would be, if you know your topic and you can add value to, because cybersecurity is one of those topics it's talked a lot about in the media, and they're always looking for people to have opinions and add value, because basically they don't know anything about cybersecurity. If you're a journalist, you're writing about cybersecurity one day and then flowers the next. So how are you supposed to be an expert? That's why there's sort of a nice exchange between startups and the media, because it's actually quite, if you make the effort, you can actually get established quite quickly in your field and sort of start adding comments to articles, and even getting your given your own content pieces published and so on. So we have, in our case, we have a PR person on a retainer. Doesn't cost very much. I think you could probably get by by like, I don't know, 10,000-15,000 a month if you're sort of serious about it. And then she will or he will find you articles where you can add your opinion, and they're asking for opinions. And so we get on a weekly basis, we get asked sort of this is a topic that this magazine is talking about. Do you want to leave a comment? So just 2 weeks ago, it was a UK website newspaper that was talking about AI copyright. So I managed to squeeze in a comment about AI copyright. I don't know much about AI copyright, but I do know more probably than the journalist who wrote it. So we managed to get a commentary. So it's actually a very cost-efficient way of doing what you want to do, which is establishing trust. Because then you can also use that article when you're doing your pitch. So like just attaching the article, say I was mentioned here by this thing, and that establishes trust.
Thank you, because everything is not only about the content either, even if the trust issue in our sector is so important. So
yeah, sure.
And everything is tailor-made. So I would say, actually, this sounds very weird, but nobody knows about cybersecurity, even I. It's so complex. So these are the difficulties that's why we are scaling our business also, even with the knowledge we have. So yeah, that's my little journey.
Nice. Thanks, Iris, for the question. Any final words before we say thanks to everyone, Erik?
No, I mean, feel free to reach out if you need input on anything. And as I mentioned, I mean, just start testing tools, start reading if you're not doing it. It's a very fun landscape to follow and try, because it's just so much happening in this space, which you probably already know. So yeah.
Awesome. And you can ping Erik also on Slack if you want to have a conversation. Happy to connect you guys. Let me know if you want to help, and then I help with that. Final words from my side is we have Zupyak, Erik's company's offer on the platform now as a perk. So just search for it or find it under PR and marketing, I guess, is the sector, the category. And also, FYI, we're going to do another SEO session on like keyword hacking in January, but I'll send you more details on that later on. Next up in November, App Store optimization. We also have a separate session in November on qualified employee stock options and some updates from the tax authorities. We're going to have a session on employment law in December that also covers non-EU employees and what that means, because the government is pushing for new restrictions on that. So a lot of valuable, exciting things up and coming. Stay tuned for that. And thanks again, Erik, for putting this together, and everyone for joining. We'll send out the deck afterwards, and we'll upload it to the platform as always. Have a great day. Thanks.
You too.